Hello, Dr. Tony Evans here. We're so excited for this series designed to minister to the Church of Jesus Christ, to its congregants and its leaders. It's called the COVID-19 Toolkit, where we just want to encourage you and provide you support because you're so critical to the well-being of not only your congregation, but the well-being of the spheres in which your congregants live and work and play. So God bless you, and may this ministry ongoingly, as you keep with us, keep you strong as you keep others strong as well.
Well, hello, KAP pastors. We welcome you to our series that we are doing around small groups. We're so excited that our KAP pastors have decided to join us. These videos are designed to help our pastors and church leaders minister to their members. And so we welcome you all to this series. And we're so excited to have some of our guests today, some of my friends and colleagues, Terry Pittman and John Fortner. Terry and John, welcome to the phone call and to the Zoom. We're glad that you all have joined us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Glad to be here too.
Well, it's so good to see the both of you. Let's start off with some basic introductions. So I'm going to start with you, Terry. Introduce yourself and tell our guests the work that you are doing around small groups, your title and the role that you serve in at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church. And then John, after she finishes, I'll have you to do the same.
All right.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. As Pastor Wolford said, my name is Terry Pittman, and I serve as the Director of Community Life at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. And within Community Life, we actually have 4 separate ministry areas. Small groups, which is one of them, the single life ministry, married life ministry, as well as spiritual growth. So it's a very robust area to oversee ministry-wise. And small groups right now has kind of taken on, because of the season that we're in, the predominant role in the ministry at the moment.
Thank you, Terry, for that introduction.
You're welcome.
All right. I'm John Fortner, and I am the director of the Tony Evans Training Center for the Urban Alternative. And that's my primary role now. It's an online training platform for churches, for leaders, for disciples wanting to dig in and grow a little deeper in God's Word. So we offer online courses taught by Dr. Tony Evans, and that's available to anyone, anytime. We have free courses on there as well as paid courses, and it's at tonyevanstraining.org. In addition, I used to be director of group life at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship before Terry took it and did a much better job than I could do. But I served there for just about between 6 to 7 years there on staff in various roles, and then my last role was director of group life. And I continue to work and consult with different churches on group life, community, small groups, curriculum, that kind of thing. And still love to be a part of groups. So excited to have this conversation today.
Again, thanks, John and Terry, for being on. Let's jump right into our discussion. We know that amid COVID, our world has changed in so many different ways, particularly as it relates to how we gather, how we engage one another. So it's probably safe to assume that most of the small groups prior to COVID were in person, where you were gathering maybe, where you could see and touch and connect with each other. Let's just kind of talk through how would you evaluate the importance of small groups ministry in light of the impact of COVID and how that has changed how you do small groups. What would you say, Terry? How would you gauge the importance of small groups during this time?
It's extremely important because one of the things that the Bible directs us to do is not to forsake our gathering together. And small groups allows us to continue to gather. We may not be able to do that in person, but we can definitely keep that spiritual connection going virtually. And for a lot of churches, that will be the primary method through which the members can remain connected. Yes, we have online services and other things they may be doing online, but that saint-to-saint saint ministry is happening within the context of the small group. So it is vitally important to have small groups during this season.
I love that saint to saint ministry. Can we steal that? That's a term that you've coined. I love that thought.
Yes, yes, you can.
I appreciate that. You may hear that again, Terry.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a nugget in and of itself. John, how have you seen the changes, and what would you say the importance of small groups during this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think what COVID, the pandemic, all this has done as much as anything. Is that I think, the pandemic has been kind of an opportunity for churches to see and reveal the quality of the relational commitment of the church and the community that was already existing there. Because there are churches who have thrived during this time in terms of community because they already had close community bonds. People had invested in each other relationally. And I think churches, we don't have to tell some of the pastors out there in some sense that COVID was a shock to the system, but it was also in some ways a thermometer or a gauge to take a look at how well have I done as a church, as a leader, in investing in building that sort of relational DNA that is at the heart of every church, because we're called to be a community that cares for each other, that connects, that loves one another, all those one another's. And COVID has really, I think, taken off maybe some of the Band-Aids for some places that we put on that and helped us to look at. So how connected were we as a church? One writer was putting it this way, and I thought this was good. Though this isn't true for every church, but it's like the church is playing chess now, and the queen has been taken out of the game. So the queen is that worship service that so many of us bank on, that the big worship service where everybody is in there together. Now we've been able to mirror that, mock that up some up with online services, but obviously it's not the same. So now we as churches are having to discover what some of those other pieces on our chessboard can do. And one of the key ones, I think, is group life, community life, small groups. So we're having to learn the reality of how much we've invested in that and how strong that is. So I think they're incredibly vital to this season, and will continue to be as this season of certainty is upon us, that the way we do church is going to be marked in large part by the way that we're able to do group life in small groups.
Well, I love the context of how you've shared that illustration as far as chess. The queen has been removed. So let's talk through, John and Terry. Let's say a leader, church leaders, prior to COVID did not have a model for small groups in their congregation, in their community. What would you say are some of the critical things for them to start looking at doing this saint to saint ministry? If they've been struggling, where would you say how can they ignite that? What would be some nuggets you can share? Let's just go back to you, John, and then Terry pick up where John may leave off there.
Yeah. So if you didn't already have some kind of small group ministry in place or some kind of structure that it's in there, I would bet that you are already having organically small groups that are forming. Because the reality is that we are relational in our personhood. So we're created in the image of a God who has always existed as a community of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So we're always going to be drawn into community in some sort of way. So I would bet if you called up some of your key people, called up people, they're already meeting via Zoom or via FaceTime or via some other sort of thing. So I think it's always wise to start where you're at. You've already got some organic sort of catalytic sort of things that are probably moving in your church, where people are just trying to connect because they have to. It's just part of who they're made to be. So I think that's really important, just to realize how are people already connecting during this time of disconnection. And then for me, there's always this reality that you probably already know as a pastor who are the really gifted people in your church, no matter what the size is, that are incredible connectors. I mean, they're just, they've got that drive towards community in their DNA. I mean, Terry's heard me say this many times, but my wife is a great example of this. It's somewhat of an irony that I'm in small group ministry because she's really the one who's got all the gifts. And I feel like more often than not, I'm just systemizing what she already does. But she's an example of that she's just relationally connected. And then you as a pastor are trying to get them into a place where they can connect with other people. So you're resourcing them, giving them resources. You're identifying them as somebody who has these gifts, and you're inviting them in. Hey, just invite a few friends that are around you, that are in our church or in our community, and begin to do that. So I think you've already got stuff going on, and then you already know some people who are really super gifted at that. And I think that's a good place that you can start from there. And I know Terry will have some more probably practical things to do that, but theoretically, I think just the reality is that people are going to connect, and you just need to be able to find ways to stir that already catalyzed environment, and begin to provide some resources to folks.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, and just continuing there where John left off, some of the practical things that you can do is, one, I would say what's most important, and he mentioned it, is your pastor as the champion of your small groups. So especially during this season, your pastor, whether they do the call, say during a weekly update that they may be putting out, but just letting the members know, hey, we want you to be connected with one another. Some of you may be already informally meeting, and now we just want to take that to the next level. And so we're looking for, in our case, we refer to them as hosts. So one of the things that we did is we started with virtual host during this season. It's normally something that we do in the fall, but with COVID, we implemented it immediately as soon as the church doors were closed while we entered into this season. And that was wonderful because here's what it did. In this particular setting, and we always knew this, we had members that could not meet in person for various reasons: family commitments, job commitments, location. A DFW is such a large metroplex, they just could not make it to an in-person setting. And when we opened up a virtual opportunity, the floodgates also opened with it. Wow. And so now we had people who could not, who always wanted to, now they can. And so that has been really exciting, and they are very committed. And so with that, you also have to provide them with tools. And so for those individuals, we have a leader resource. It's online, a toolkit that we provide for them. I also do a virtual orientation for very short. It's about 40 minutes in length for those individuals, so I can give them a roadmap on what we need them to do during this season, making it very simple, very turnkey, so that the expectation is we want you to serve, we want you to host, we want you to gather some people together, but we don't want to make it difficult for you. And then another piece that is key, because a lot of these people are doing this for the first time, like John mentioned, these are maybe very relational people, your go-getters, but we want them to be successful. So we provide them with a coach, and that coach contacts them weekly and for encouragement, for prayer. If they're running into any problems or any concerns, they have someone else there that's able to assist them as they walk through this season. And we also give them an end date. And this was real interesting because we immediately went to groups around the 19th of March virtually. And my initial timeline for them was about May 31st. Well, when that happened, because we're still in this season,
right.
It's been extended, but I told them that up front, that the season may be extended and that the focus would be, we still had the study, but we're really going to focus on being an encouragement to one another and spiritual connection, because a lot of people were becoming fearful, anxiety. I'm isolated, I'm at home by myself. And so we wanted there really to be, I'm going back to that saint to saint ministry again, really that loving one another and caring for one another. So that was really important. And I think that had a lot to do with why the ones that came on as the host were very connected and on board immediately. And then of course we transitioned our regular groups as well. So just what John said, you begin with what you have, and then you build upon that.
Well, thank you both for that. So a couple of things, let me just, several things that I heard is from John, kind of driving towards connectivity, having some structure there, maybe identifying where pastors already may have had some resources, but building upon that. But then what you said, Terry, virtual hosts, toolkit, being able to have coaches, and then an end date would be some of the points that pastors can begin to take as nuggets. So with that having been said, let's talk through this thought. Do you believe amid COVID that the dynamics of small groups, are there dynamics of small groups that you think have changed permanently, that this has introduced a new world to us and we think that this is here to stay? What would you all say to that?
I would say, I'll go ahead. I will say absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was actually really excited because it gave us another opportunity, as I previously mentioned, to reach people that wanted to participate that didn't have the opportunity. And so in our case, we will have virtual groups moving forward. I do not see them ending because the one thing is, once you connect people in community, you want them to stay connected. And so now we're in the process of just looking at what does that look like for them long term. But yes, that is the big shift. As a matter of fact, I'll take it an even step further. For us, our entire ministry will remain virtual the rest of the year. So through December, we are a 100% virtual ministry.
Wow, that's amazing. You know, one of the interesting things, and I'll let John chime in, as I have learned, and I've said this with the conversation with Dr. Evans, what we learned as a congregation, that there were members within our congregation who had already, as a lifestyle, been socially distanced from us because they could not connect with us during the natural cadence of our worship experience, whether it be Sunday, Wednesday, other meetings, because of their mobility issues or whatever life circumstances. But COVID has allowed us to reach to them in ways that we were blind to. So at the point, very well taken, Terry. I think there's some shifts for us that are very positive, that are absolutely very positive. John, what would you say to that? Anything that you see from a permanent connection that may be here to stay?
Yeah, I think one of my responses to that would be that I think it has hopefully and prayerfully permanently changed a lot of the ways that churches think about group life. In terms of, for a lot of churches, whether it's through their Sunday schools or ministry groups or actual small groups that meet in home, that kind of thing, that is considered maybe like a part of what they do, right? I mean, it's something that we invest some resources in. We do, it's something we run, and we may have some either paid or unpaid volunteers. And I would hope, I think this is probably true, is that it's shifting more towards a center of this is who we are as a church, is that we're a group of people who do meet together in a large group, but the stuff of the church, the pastoral work that has to be done, the investment, the catalyst for service, that it's flowing out of small groups. So it shifts more into binding into the actual DNA of what a church is like. Because there's just an awareness now of how critical this is during times when we can't meet together as a large group. And we're in such a season of uncertainty, it's hard to put firm deadlines around that. We may be meeting together as a large group, and then we have to back off for a season. So yes, I would hope it changes in that it shifts the vision to say, this is critical to what we do and how we exist as the people of God, that we're in community with one another. Now, one thing that I would say that it won't shift, and I think this is the reality, even online small groups are going to be a part of a lot of ministries that have tinkered with this and tried this out, as Terry had said. But there is something about prior to COVID that one of the values of small group is that, unlike the large worship center, it's a chance for embodied community where people are, touching one another, engaged with one another. And I think that what we're headed to probably is some sort of hybrid with that, in that, when it becomes safer, when it's clear how we can do that I think, again, because we are created in the image of a personal, relational God who incarnated, who became flesh to be with us, that we're going to desire to do that. And I think for the church to pull that off, small groups is one of the best places for that to happen as we begin to bring back embodied community. That we do meet online, but then there's also that deep desire to be around a brother or sister in Christ. And that when we gather together like that scripture promises God is present with us in that embodied community. I think that this will heighten that desire. It will deepen that thirst for that. And I think groups are a wonderful way for that to happen and to be able to manage that in safe ways around smaller groups.
Well, this is such an exciting conversation. What I would like for us to do is we're going to have another segment where we're going to invite some of the small group coordinators to join and jump in on this dialogue. So I want to shift our conversation, and we're going to welcome to our discussions the rest of the small group coordinators who are going to come in and share some more nuggets and some wisdom, particularly as it relates to small groups. So John and Terry, thank you all so much for being a part of this first segment in just a few minutes. Well, hello, welcome back. This is Charles Wolford with the KAP, the Kingdom Agenda of Pastors, and we welcome you back to this second segment. And we're having conversations around small groups. These are designed to equip our pastors and leaders with resources for their congregations of how they can lead during these time amid COVID. We know that COVID has changed our world, but we believe that Christ has answers and solutions and resources that we can engage with. And so I want to take this time to welcome to this segment our panelists for this discussion via Zoom. And so we have Terry Pittman, who's joining with us, Tamara, and also Erin, who's going to join us.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's a joy to be with you today. And again, my name is Terry Pittman, and I serve as the Director of Community Life at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. And Community Life is comprised of 4 ministry areas, one of which is small groups. We also have Single Life for the singles, spiritual growth, as well as married life for the couples. And so that's just all encompassing. And we just do all things community and getting people connected so that they can grow and serve within the context of community with other believers.
Thank you, Terry. Welcome.
My name is Erin Watkins, and I am over the singles ministry at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. And so I oversee about 4,000, 5,000 singles that we have there at the church. And so I've been on staff for about 2 years now and thoroughly enjoying it, and I've had to adapt to a lot of different changes due to the COVID-19 crisis, but have thoroughly enjoyed working with the singles and look forward to what God's going to do even in the midst of this crisis. So thank you for having me on.
That's 4,000. That's a mega church right there, Erin. So you're pastoring a mega church. That's who would be. Tamara, thank you. Go ahead and join us.
Yes, thank you. Hello, my name is Tamara Hunt, and I am the Community Life Coordinator, and I serve the women's small groups.
Tamara, thank you so much for being on, and I will do everything we can to make sure I pronounce it Tamara as we go forward. Thank you all for joining us. And to our KAP pastors, we hope and pray that these segments are helpful to you all, but we have some of the best and brightest to talk around small groups. And so in our previous session, we talked about how our world has changed amid COVID, and what is it like to now have these connections via Zoom. And so let's just start in with these conversations. And I'm very interested, Erin, to see and hear how singles have been impacted and how you're navigating and transitioning with groups in this virtual environment. So how are the singles doing, Erin, with this COVID?
Yes, I think for singles, just from getting feedback from our groups, it's definitely tougher. If you think about single parents who are having to work from home, some that have lost jobs, that are taking care of little ones, and now they're having to provide 5 extra meals a day because due to the schools being out, and that's tougher. And also just being isolated as well, and then not having the community rhythms that they're normally used to. And so it's definitely been an impact in terms of just the community environment, the family environment, so many different things that have been affecting them. And on top of that, family members that have been passing away due to the virus as well, or just having to deal with other issues family-wise. So it's just a lot of different dynamics. And so for us, our goal has been just to make sure that we're there, that we're consistently there, that we provide a lot of ways for singles to connect in various different ways. And so that's really what the focus has been during this season, is many touches in many different ways.
Well, thank you for that. I know hearing from family members, it's one thing to kind of have these new navigated spaces where you have to be teacher, principal, coach, taxi, Uber, all that. So this is a new environment. I can only imagine with singles having to juggle so many things amid this time. Thank you for that work that you're doing, Erin. Tamara, let's talk through your specialized group. What are they experiencing? You're specifically working with couples, is that correct?
The women.
The women. So let's talk through that. What has been some of the challenges that you're hearing with COVID with the women that you're working with?
Well, many of the things that Erin already mentioned, but I do have women, some are single as well as married. So of course, there's a lot of issues that have come up with people being in, sheltering in place in relationships, even though we have someone else that is our coordinator with the couples, I still have the women. So those issues come to me as well. So definitely, as Erin said, you know, people have various illnesses within their family due to COVID, as well as there are many marital issues that people are dealing with. And as he said, just navigating life today because it is different.
Yeah. And Terry, we know Stevie Simmons, who's over couples, and so thank you for that clarification, could not join us. But what are we seeing with couples during this time of COVID, Terry?
Very similar, as Erin and Tamara have already mentioned, that couples, especially those where maybe there had been a little bit of tension in the marriage that they were trying to work through, that has been exacerbated by being sheltered in place together during this season. So a lot of the couples are in crisis, and actually Stevie is spending a great deal of time counseling couples in this season to try to help them get through with, you know, the wife and the husband and the children, and again, all of the other requirements that they have. So it has been a very taxing season for some of our couples. Now we have many that are very healthy and are thriving quite well, but then we also have those that we're having to provide additional support to, additional care to during this time.
Well, thank you. So let's talk through some of the challenges we're hearing from young people and groups as a whole that people are getting tired of Zoom and doing these virtual conversations. What are you all using as creative resources that you can share with pastors? Because we're hearing it, I'm tired of Zoom, I'm tired of doing church online, I want to see some people, I want to touch. So what are some of the tools that you all are able to share with community now because of what we're calling some Zoom fatigue, as it would be, or social distancing fatigue? Let's start with you, Erin. What are some of the nuggets that you're using to keep them engaged, and then we'll ask the rest of you to share with what you're doing.
Yes, I've been challenging a lot of my leaders to really think outside the box, because you're right. I mean, with Zoom, sometimes you have work meetings that you're on Zoom, and other you may be watching different church services online, and so you're always on the computer screen. And so we have another resource that we recommend called Free Conference Call HD. So it's where you can basically have a large conference call and just talk on the phone. And so, you know, instead of just mix it up, you know, don't just do one certain thing. Mm-hmm. We've also been encouraging them to do what we call like virtual game nights. So get creative, do like a scavenger hunt inside the home, or just even just share testimonies in a different way. And then another thing we've recommended is using the YouVersion Bible app. And so the YouVersion Bible app has plans by Dr. Evans and other pastors as well, where they can hop on virtually and go through a devotional plan together and comment on that plan. And so that's another way to still create an experience and create connectivity without it having to always be a Zoom call or something like that.
Wow. How about you, Tamara? What is it like for couples, or your women, for the Zoom fatigue? Are they experiencing or having those conversations with you?
Well, that's interesting because actually there are many that are experiencing that Zoom fatigue, but it's not necessarily from the groups. They're embracing groups and having fun. We normally would ask our small groups to meet at least twice a month, but now that we've gone virtually, many of them on their own accord have started meeting weekly.
Oh, wow.
So they're, yeah,
That's good.
so they're actually enjoying the availability that they have at this time to get together and connect. But many of us women are more social and chatty, so that might be why they are enjoying that so much. But they are having fun though with that and doing different things as well, not just necessarily doing a study, but they're getting together and doing fun things via Zoom, like games such as a house scavenger hunt or something like that. So they're making it fun, along with, diving in and studying the word and all of that too.
Well, thank you. Terry, what would be some resources? We're talking with KAP pastors, with a large percent of our KAP pastors are bivocational, may not have the benefit of having a team of coordinators to lead. What would be some tools, Terry, that you could suggest to pastors right now as they may be trying to figure out, I would love to do the small group thing, and I would love to have singles and couples and married group and women's group and men's group. What would be some tools that you would recommend to some of those pastors?
Well, one of the tools that they can use for studies, so they don't have to try to create those, we happen to be sermon-based at Oak Cliff, so all of our discussion guides or study guides are based on Dr. Evans' sermons on Sunday.
Okay.
They could use Right Now Media as a resource. I highly recommend that because studies are already built in. You have the videos and you have the study material there for you. So it becomes very just, turn it on, introduce it, and then follow that. That would make it very easy for them. And then those studies can be, you can resource them by, whether it's for men, women, singles, family member, family groupings. The sky's the limit with Right Now Media. So that's really a great tool. Not exactly certain when this will be shown, but here's a resource that just came available because we are virtual, and that would be the Regroup Conference. It's associated with North Point Church in Atlanta, Georgia, Andy Stanley's church, and that conference occurs in mid-July. I believe the dates are July 13 through 26. And so if they have an opportunity to do that, that's great because unlike previous years, they have opened it up to where they actually have it built in. There could be some training that is done of new leaders built into their conference. And like I said, that's unique for this virtual season that we're in. So that's another quick resource. Other resources, like I said, might be just doing the sermon-based study to help out with members as well. So those are some real quick, get in your hand tools that they can turn to right now.
Those are great. Thank you for that, Terry. Let's talk through, so you have a little bit of Zoom fatigue, but you have restlessness amid COVID. You have messaging out throughout the world. It's okay to go out. It's start to gathering. Some churches actually over the last 45 to 60 days have actually opened up their doors. So some of our pastors may actually have some level of whether it be 25 to 50%. So in your group contexts, are any of your groups currently meeting in person? And if so, what guidelines are you giving them as we are practicing social distancing to actually have groups, if any? And what suggestions would you have for them if you are giving some guidance? And well, yes, you can do this in your small groups. Anyone want to take that discussion? I'll punt it to all three of you.
Currently, our groups are not meeting in person, and that's because we are staying in line with what the policy is for Oak Cliff. So since we have not reopened the church for the congregation, we're also not encouraging the groups to meet in person. And so I know that's a real area that has to be walked through very carefully because as we know, we're relational. and we want to get together, we want to hug, we want to see each other face to face. But then you also have to look at, you have to weigh the cost of that as well. So if groups are meeting in person, they still need to maintain that social distancing. They may even, this is something that's always important too, we have covenants that each member of our group signs, and it provides the ground rules for what occurs in the group. So within the covenant, that would be amended to put in there what is required in this type of season, say with social distancing. We all agree, the social distancing. And here's another aspect of that. Within a group, you may have some members that are comfortable coming back in person, doing social distancing, and others that are not. So now they may have to look at doing two things: during the course of the meeting, Zooming it in, or doing a conference calling in those members that are not comfortable of meeting in person, because they should not be excluded, because they're not ready to do that. So you have to find a way. That's kind of the little bit of the hybrid. You have to find a way of pulling them in so that they remain connected in community as well. So those are some of the things that I would recommend, really watching that and ensuring that groups understand the importance of that.
Thank you so much. I like that hybrid idea. Any other comments by anyone else?
No.
All right, very good. So let's talk through curriculum and what you all have had to do with regards to adjusting curriculum amid COVID in this virtual environment. So you've mentioned a couple of resources that are out there and the curriculum that you all are using. So what kind of curriculum do you think works best for small groups during pandemic? And then what adjustments have you had to make with the online curriculum, if any? So what would you say to that? Anyone can jump in with that discussion.
I'll let Tamara take that one.
Okay, well, normally our small groups, actually we take a summer break. We usually start in September and we end in May. So that is one difference, is that we are providing curriculum throughout the summer because Pastor really wanted to make sure that everyone stayed and remained connected during that time. One of the things that we do is produce a study guide. So again, that would normally end in May, but we're continuing to produce that on a weekly basis so people can have that option to be able to use that. At the same time, we're not requiring that they use it, because our main purpose at this point is for that care, connectivity, get together, meet, pray together, check on each other and see how each other is doing. And at the same time, Terry had mentioned earlier that we have the Right Now Media resource. So we do give them the option in the spring to utilize that as well. We have a library built into Right Now Media where we have selected various resources that they can use. And then other than that, if they want to use something else, that's fine. They can just get that pre-approved, and we will allow that as well.
Now, Tamara, is that most of that stuff online on the website for you all to be able to pull down, or how would they access that?
Yes, for those that are participating in official small group leaders within the ministry, we actually email that out to them.
Okay.
But Ministry Advancement also uploads that on the website as well. So we make it available to everyone because we're doing the streaming online. So we are encouraging people during this time that aren't even part of the official, small groups ministry to still get together with coworkers, friends, families after the service and talk about the service that they choose.
Thank you. What have you all seen, particularly as relates to participation and the ebbs and flows? So let's, some of the markers that we've had, particularly as relates to starting virtual, let's say it's March. We thought that we would possibly be out of this by May. I think we were all crossing our fingers and praying to God that COVID would be over, but it is not. What have you seen with regards to spikes up and down, highs and lows in your group participation? Erin, anything specifically for you with regards to group participation up and ebbs and flows?
Yes. So at first, when the pandemic started, we were meeting with the singles through the free conference call HD. And the numbers were surprisingly consistent. So that notified me that singles are definitely still wanting connection during this time. Mm-hmm. And then we switched to Zoom and made the programming even more dynamic for the singles. And the numbers increased with it being on Zoom, because obviously the conference call, it wasn't face-to-face, but now using Zoom, you do have the face-to-face interaction. So I've seen a lot of consistency in that. We decided to extend the series that we were doing with the singles into the summer, just because of everything that's happening right now. And the summer series that we're doing is lighter, it's focused on relationships, that sort of thing. And the numbers have kind of dropped a little bit, but majority, they're still consistent in that.
Good, good. Terry and Tamara, anything with regards to what you were seeing in those numbers?
Tamara, you go with the women.
Okay, yes. Definitely with the women, I can definitely say increase participation. Okay. And one thing I want to mention here, and Terry was really adamant about this, and I certainly agree and appreciate it as well. We did not force our people to select a virtual platform. So not everyone started out using Zoom. By far, that seems to be a very easy tool to use, and many people are using it. But one of the things that we were adamant about is not forcing them to do that. So we put together a resource with a variety of different options that they can use. Erin had already mentioned the free conference call, but as well Zoom, WebEx, Google Duo. So we put together a resource that Terry sent out so they could have a choice of what they would select, because everyone is different on their comfort level with technology. But using those various tools, we have definitely increased the number of people who are participating in our small groups, not only locally or church members, but we do open our small groups to non-members as well. So we have been Zooming, of course, or not Zooming, but we have been streaming the sermon online. So we have gotten quite a bit of participation from members as well as non-members, like I said, not only locally, but all literally we can say now around the world, outside of the US as well. And in addition to that, we started a host campaign to meet the need for those people who wanted to officially get some type of orientation on how to gather together their friends and family. And I know Terry can speak more to that as well.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so as Erin and Tamara have already said, we've seen an increase, not a drop off, in our participation. And two ways, one with our, as I'm going to refer to them, our traditional in-person groups that converted to virtual formats, as well as to the virtual hosts that we implemented during this season. And so both of those together are doing really well, and we're still going strong, as a matter of fact. And so that was very important, and it met Dr. Evans' intent too, for us keeping connectivity and then providing a place for those individuals that aren't members. Our only requirement, and this is important too, is that the leader of the group, whether they're a host, whether they're a long-term small group leader, is a member of our church. Members of the group can be anyone. This is the beauty of it. And so now it becomes a tool for evangelism as well. You know, if you have a mixture of believers and non-believers, there's an opportunity for them to hear the gospel in the context of this small group where they're building community with other people. So that's always exciting to see it happen, and then to see the fruit from that. And that's kind of where we are with how we're doing our groups at the moment.
Well, very good. Well, I want to say on behalf of Dr. Evans and the Urban Alternative and what we've been doing with KAP pastors, this has been extremely helpful. I've been jotting down notes myself, and so I know other pastors, as they are going to listen to this series, they are going to be incredibly blessed with your wisdom and knowledge, particularly around small groups. Again, I have been joined by Terry, Tamara, and also Erin, who are small group gurus at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship Church, where Dr. Tony Evans serves as the senior pastor. We're so grateful for your time together during this series, and we are the better for what you all are sharing with us. And we're so grateful for the resources that you all have been able to impart with us during this time. I want us to stop this series or this conversation with one nugget that you can provide with pastors and leaders. If you could just drop a nugget for them that you think would help pole vault them during this time of COVID, or encourage them as they launch into small groups? And I'm going to have you, Terry, to start, just a nugget of wisdom that you can share as we get ready to sign off, and then Erin and Tamara will have you guys to follow.
The big one is just start. So start where you are and build from there. And this is also part of that. Have your pastor champion the groups for you. That is key to the success, is the senior pastor championing the groups.
Thank you.
Yes, and I would say definitely make sure that you're thinking through your people as much as you can in terms of dynamic connectivity and consistency, because that's what will go the distance in terms of relationships, in terms of meeting people's needs during this crisis.
Thank you.
I had a big smile over here when Terry spoke, because she took mine. But it's great. I would definitely say the same thing. If you don't already have small groups, I highly recommend it. I've been so blessed by it myself, participating in leading a group, and just having the opportunity to connect others to group, because they are so appreciative of being able to be connected during this time. So especially for those churches that are not meeting in person at this time, I highly recommend, if you haven't yet, to start a small groups ministry.
Well, thank you all so much. These have been great nuggets. A couple of things just to resource you all with. Please be reminded, pastors, to go to the Tony Evans Training Center. There's great resources for each and every one of you to log in, to download. They've also made some recommendations of having kind of a smorgasbord, as it would be for virtual platforms. Don't be dedicated only just to one. I heard as a suggestion, WebEx conference calls. You've had Ring meetings. I think the other one would be Google Dual and WebEx. So be nimble, pastors, as you seek to guide your congregation during this time of pandemic. To each and every one of our panelists, thank you all for coming on and blessing our pastors. You all have been a tremendous gift to us all. Thank you for your time and your commitment to the ministry and the advancement of the kingdom of God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. You all be blessed.